right, we're good to go. All right. Well, good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 13, 2021 Urbandale City Council meeting. I will call the meeting to order and ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Carberry Montgomery. Here. Caduce.
Here.
Obrecht.
Here.
Hoagie.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
Thank you.
Please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Urbandale is a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting tonight's meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. Item 2 is approve the agenda. I'll ask for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Hoagie, second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote.
Apologize, Councilmember Russell, is it not coming up?
Are you sleeping?
We'll take a voice vote. Thank you.
All right, that passes. Item 3, this is Citizens Forum. This is the opportunity to address the council on something that's not a part of tonight's regular agenda, and I believe we have one person online that had asked to be recognized. Vern, are you online right now, and would you like to be recognized?
Yeah, I'm here, Bob.
Okay, if you can give your full name and address for the record, please.
Vern Millsap at Best Land Properties. So the reason that I wanted recognized is because I watched, I believe it was the 6/15/21 meeting, and I did it on YouTube. And in there, I heard somebody in references to the, who was that, Miller Land, that you guys were fighting, had the lawyers in there. But anyway, somebody mentioned in there when the council wasn't like getting its way with that land, somebody said eminent domain. I don't know, I didn't recognize the voice, but I thought, is that how you guys plan on getting that land from that guy to widen the highway, is eminent domain? I heard that, and it said, if anyone cares, it's 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 17 seconds in.
Right.
And I want to say also that when I watched YouTube for the last meeting, the one I missed, the audio was echoing real bad. So it was hard to understand what you guys were saying a lot of the time. And there's things that I noticed in the minutes too, like there were things about Civil Rights Act, Reform Act, and then you have the infrastructure. I mean, where's all that money gonna go? And in the minutes, there was also mention of $6.1 million in some kind of money that we were gonna get as a city. I mean, I don't care too much as long as the taxpayers are not put on the hook for anything, and that people don't get special deals out of this money. That I mean, I'm not talking about somebody taking the money, but just business interests maybe getting money. Like a friend of mine brought up recently, money that was given to business people building apartment buildings that got TIF money, TIF. And I'm sure you guys know what that is, because it gives the people that are refurbishing apartments and stuff like that, like $50,000 to $70,000 per apartment to renovate. I was shocked by that. So I just could not believe that. And I would like to know if that's true, because there's so many apartment buildings going in that it's unbelievable. And like I've said before, they're going around our property, not you guys' property. So we don't like it at all. Me and my neighbors. Some of them just don't want to say nothing. But I do, because I don't want a bunch of apartment buildings around my house. Then too, it's doing the business owners maybe some good, bringing like low income, like Merle Hay Mall and stuff, but it's not doing us property owners very much good at all. So those are a few, because I also heard something about maybe a homeless shelter in Ramada Inn.
That's not even.
I didn't know.
Vern, that's not even in Urbandale. So if you could wrap up your comments, we're getting on your 5 minutes. So if you have anything further you'd like to comment on.
Well, I'd like to know what all the money is for, the Civil Rights Act, Reform Act, and infrastructure, which hasn't been passed yet, but it seems like a lot of money that somebody's going to be, I don't know, like
I'm not sure exactly what you're
whatever.
referring to, but we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any specific questions. We can do that offline. I don't know if that, I mean, this is a time to provide some comments.
I'm providing my comments that I'd like answers to, so I will. I'll contact you, Bob.
All right.
I mean, I want to know.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on something that's not a part of tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on then. Item 4 is to adopt the minutes from the June 29 meeting.
I'll move adoption.
Motion by Caduce.
Second.
Second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. Thank you. Item 5 is the consent agenda. We have 10 items for approval.
Move approval.
Motion by Poggi. Second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. All right, thank you. That passes. Item 6, public hearings. First is item 6.1, a public hearing to consider the amendment to the zoning code regarding tattoo and piercing shops. The public notice for this was published in the July 2, 2021 Des Moines Register, and asked, are there any objections to that notice as published?
There were none.
As for motion to open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing.
Motion by Obrecht. Second by Caduce. Discussion, please vote.
Nicole, I didn't get a voting screen. Thank you.
All right, that passes. To introduce the items, our Community Development Director, Steve Franklin. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. This is a request from Knapp Properties to amend our zoning code to allow tattoo and piercing shops. There is a business that currently exists in the Valley West Mall. They were interested in moving to Urbandale into a space on 100th Street, and Knapp reached out to us to see if that would be a permitted use. And so we started digging around in the zoning code and discovered that that is not a permitted use currently in our zoning code. Did a little bit of research, and I think we would just summarize it to say that, probably 20 or 30 years ago, from where that comes from as a carryover in previous zoning code versions of the zoning code, tattoos are much more accepted and commonplace today than they were 20 or 30 years ago. And we as staff and the research that we did not see any reason to not recommend approval of changing the code to allow tattoo and piercing shops. So Planning and Zoning Commission discussed it. They unanimously recommended making that change, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve from the council?
I guess hours of operation, anything different than any other business on these?
Not based on the information provided to us.
All right, we are in public hearing on this item. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on this item? All right. Hearing or seeing none, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Caduce,
Second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. So then we have three items. One would be the first reading, the second would be to suspend the rules, and then to have the waive, then the third would be to waive the second and approve the third and final reading, so.
I'll make a motion to, for the first reading of the ordinance, let's see,
2021-14.
yeah, 010-2021.
2021-14.
Yes.
Yes.
correct, I'm sorry, 2021-14,
Yep.
sorry.
So motion by Caduce,
Second.
second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. That passes.
And I'll make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings of the ordinance.
Okay, motion by Caduce,
Second.
second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. That passes.
And I'll make the third motion that'll waive the second and approve the third and final reading of ordinance 2021-14.
Second.
Motion by Caduce, second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. And that passes. All right, thank you. Moving on to item 6.2, it's a public hearing to consider the landmark office park lots 4, 5, and 6 amendment to the comprehensive plan and rezoning from CO Office Service District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District at 9310 to 9370 Plum Drive. The public notice for this was also published in the July 2, 2021 Des Moines Register. Ask for any objections to that. Notice is published.
There were none.
Ask for a motion and a second to open public hearing.
Move to open the hearing.
Motion by Obrecht,
Second.
second by Pogie. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Steve?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. I don't know why it's not. Let me try it again. Well, there we go. Sometimes I think it just has to think about it. Okay, so this is a request to rezone these 3 parcels that you see outlined in red here on the south side of Plum Drive. These are parcels that were part of the, or are part, excuse me, of the landmark office development. It was rezoned to CO several years ago. And this request is to rezone the parcels to PUD and then to incorporate these parcels into the Best Manor Business Center PUD. And this ground adjacent to the east, immediately adjacent to the east, is part of that best ground. And the reason to do that is twofold. One, the use that is proposed here is exactly the use that is proposed in the Best Manor Business Center PUD. And for administrative purposes down the road, it's much easier for staff if we've got the same name and the same use to be able to figure out 15 years from now what's going on. We've done that in 3 or 4 other places and been very successful when it makes sense if it's right next door and it's the same uses. So you probably saw from the P&Z minutes that unlike sometimes we don't know who's gonna be going there. In this case, we do know who the prospective user is. It's Premier Tech, which is a company out of Canada. They're looking to build an office facility here. It is primarily an office facility, but they do have a part of the building that will be for research and development. And so staff in talking with this didn't feel comfortable in a straight up CO zoning that we could say, yeah, this is just an office use. That R&D component made us a little bit uncomfortable, but in looking at the best PUD, that does allow the R&D component. So again, we would just bring it into that PUD. Obviously, there would be a site plan that would be required should they come to agreement and decide they do in fact want to build here. And so that would be the next step, should you approve this tonight, is to bring you that site plan, show you the parking lot, the building, and everything else that goes with it. So Planning and Zoning Commission does recommend approval, subject to the 3 conditions that were there, and those are very straightforward. It would just be a CO use. We would add the R&D component, so that's all that it could be. And then there was a condition of rezoning in the original landmark parcels that had, excuse me, that had a 50-foot landscape buffer here at the rear with a berm and a double row of trees on top of it. And that's a little bit different than what was in Best, but we suggested keeping that the same because these residents would have an expectation that that's what the buffer would be. So we kept that part the same. So be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any questions from the council for Steve on this?
Steve, this is another example, isn't it, where we are amending our comp plan for a PUD. And to me, it's like we're doing this piecemeal, waiting for the comprehensive plan. And if we had a new comp plan, would it have already have included this use? And again, it just seems to me that we're just piecemealing several, because this was originally zoned for office. The whole corridor was supposed to be office. And slowly but surely, here we are, piecemealing it to a PUD, which I don't have a problem with that. But it's just, again, to me, it's showing the need to have a comp plan that is going to update and to reflect the changes that are going along in this corridor.
Yeah, I agree that there's a need. In this particular case, I don't think anything would be, well, once we complete the comp plan, I'll promise you, we're still going to have amendments to PUDs. I mean, that's what's going to happen. My hope is that as part of some of that, the number of PUDs that we do, particularly with residential development, will change. Because, for example, right now, any residential lot that's less than 70 feet wide has to be a PUD because that's our smallest zone. So I think it'll affect residential more than it'll affect commercial. In this particular case, Dave, I think this is, it really is what was intended. The only thing that's different is that R&D component. So it's still, I mean, from the neighbors looking at it, from driving past Plum Drive, you see this building, it's going to look like an office building, and it's primarily going to serve as an office building. They just had that additional R&D component that the Best Manor PUD has within it, and so we thought it makes sense to go ahead and just incorporate it. So in this case, I think it's pretty much apples to apples, point taken, but in this case, I think it's about the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion on this?
I'll just make a note. I'm abstaining from this vote for professional conflict.
Right, thank you, Adam. All right, we are in public hearing on this item. Would anyone like to address the council on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
Move to close public hearing.
Motion by Russell. Second. Second by Poggi. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that item passes. All right, then the next item is first reading. I believe we also have a request to suspend the rules and to waive the second and make
That's correct.
final reading tonight as well, right? So, so that's not on the agenda, but that's in the, you have those votes programmed in to go for those additional votes? Oh, yeah. So the first would then be a motion for the first reading of ordinance 2021-15.
I would so move to first reading of the ordinance 2021 to amend the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Okay, motion by Russell, second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. Okay,
And I would move that we suspend the rules and waive the reading and make this the third and final reading.
okay. Motion by Russell,
Second.
second by Obrecht to suspend the rules. Discussion, roll call, or please vote, please.
You should gotta type this in when we, on the fly like this, don't you?
I prepared it on a different.
Now, do we need another motion for the,
Wait a minute.
I'm missing one vote here. Finish this off.
Okay, that passes.
And then you need
Motion to waive the second and make this the third and final reading.
I would waive the motion to waive the second reading, make this a third and final reading.
Okay, motion by Russell,
Second.
second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote.
I don't know where my motion went. Give me just a moment here.
I tried to. And move to approve council letter 6789.
Oh,
No,
give me just a
no, we're
moment
done.
here.
Once we pull it up,
I didn't see
I'm just waiting for it to pull it up.
yeah, there we go.
I apologize.
There it is.
All right, that passes. All right, thank you.
And do we still need a motion to approve the amendment to the comprehensive?
Oh, I skipped that.
Skip that.
I apologize. We need a motion to amend the comprehensive plan.
I would so move.
Okay, motion by Russell,
Second.
second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote.
Thank you.
It's a minor amendment, but just to be safe, we should do it, so yeah.
Okay, that passes. We got them all, all right, for that one. All right, thank you, sorry about that, I shouldn't have skipped over that. Item 6.3 is a public hearing to consider the storm sewer right-of-way easement vacation at 4705 74th Street. The public notice was also published in the July 2, 2021 Des Moines Register. Ask for any objections to that. Notice is published.
There were none.
Ask for a motion and a second to open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing.
Motion by Obrecht,
Second.
second by Pogie. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Steve?
Okay, I'll see if I can share this. This is a case like some that we have where there was an easement, storm sewer easement that was created as part of a previous project, and now another development has occurred and that easement is no longer needed because it's been replaced. Here we go. So this was the easement that was recorded back in 2008. It was part of our 74th Street reconstruction project. You can see Goodman here to the south, 74th Street to the west. And you may recall, I'll show you the plat here in a second, this was developed into 8 buildable lots. And so this little triangle was up in the corner, it's very small, it's about 2,000 square feet. That easement would be up here in the corner of Lot 8. But with this final plat that was approved at the previous meeting, detention is now being provided on this Outlot X, and so that easement is no longer needed. So staff recommends both the resolution and the ordinance to vacate that particular easement. Be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Steve. Questions on this? We're in public hearing on this item. Would anyone like to address the council on this item? Okay, I'll ask for a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Motion by Obrecht,
Second.
second by Pogie. Discussion, please vote. That passes.
Move resolution 89-2021.
Motion by Obrecht,
Second.
second by Pogie. Discussion, please vote. That passes.
And then move first reading of ordinance 2021-16.
Motion by Obrecht.
Second.
Second by Pogie. Discussion, please vote.
It did.
There we go. All right, that passes. All right, thank you. That concludes our public hearings. We'll move on to item 7, planning and zoning items versus item 7.1 to discuss the definitions of eating and drinking places. Steve?
Restaurants, our favorite topic. So at the last meeting, I should have and didn't, and I apologize again, should have had our current definitions with me. And so what I told you is I would provide those to you as they exist in our code today. And then, hopefully I didn't make it worse, I gave you some background information on just kind of where some of that comes from. The standard industrial classification manual was developed in the 30s. That was used by the government and city governments included for years and years and years to try to help classify where businesses fall. And it's pretty straightforward. It's, standard restaurants and fast food restaurants. So our current definitions come out of that SIC. In 1997, what we call NIAX was developed to replace SIC. And I gave you some examples in there in NIAX about how different types of restaurants are classified. My guess would be, as we get into our comp plan discussion, we're probably going to want to get more in the weeds and try to help classify what some of these are. And a good example of that would be, as you look at NIAX, you have to get into 722515, which is snack and non-alcoholic beverage bars. Based on NIAX, that would be a Starbucks. But based on our current code, a Starbucks is a fast food restaurant. So we may, as we talk about what restaurants are and continue to research, what is happening with drive-through lanes and what's not, what does carryout mean these days compared to what it meant pre-COVID, what does all that look like? But today, we have a fast food restaurant definition and a standard restaurant definition, and then I did bold the text just for emphasis in that standard restaurant paragraph. It says, blah, 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 but not including any restaurant offering drive-through service or service directly to the customer in a motor vehicle. So a standard restaurant, basically, if it has a drive-through, that's a fast food. Now, in today's world, maybe that's not the best way to define it. For years, obviously, that's how PUDs have been written. No more than 2 fast food restaurants, with the assumption being that it's going to have a drive-through. Generally, PUDs say standard restaurants, you can have as many as you want with the assumption that they will not have a drive-through. So that's what we have today. That's more information on opportunities as we move forward, looking at a new zoning code of some things that we could do. And then lastly, I gave you one example, from, I think, 2011, if I remember correctly, for the Highland Point retail development, which is across Plum Drive, which was originally part of the Best Ground, 15 acres there, where we allowed some limited uses, a couple of hotels to support the office development that was going to happen in that Plum Drive corridor. And so in addition to the hotels that are in there, part of what's in there is eating places limited. And in this particular PUD, which is the only one that I know of, Paul Decker was director at that time, used NIAX to determine what those uses were for that particular PUD. And so full-service restaurants, not more than 2 limited service restaurants, and not including drive-in service. And so I went back and read the PUD minutes. I'm thinking, drive-in, was that like Sonic? And so there was a question asked in the PUD minutes, what does that mean? And Paul said, Sonic. So didn't want a Sonic there. And so, and then he did allow the snack and alcoholic beverage bars, which again, today would be a Starbucks. So there's one opportunity where today we did use NIAX to kind of help define some things. And that is certainly your prerogative. Again, I think as we get into this comp plan discussion beginning this fall, we're going to be talking about what are the different type of restaurant uses? Is our parking calculation still right? All of that type of thing. So with that background information, I don't know what questions you might have, but I will try to answer them if you do.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Questions, discussion?
I guess for me, as reading through this, I was just surprised that there wasn't kind of a separation between what you'd think is typical fast food and kind of the quick serve in the NIAX. So I guess this set of definitions really didn't help me because it put everything still in the same category.
Right. Well, and what's interesting about NIAX is NIAX really doesn't get into drive-through lanes at all. If you read all those different classifications, it doesn't even mention drive-through. So, and again, I think that's what's going to be interesting as we continue to see how restaurants come out of COVID, what happens with drive-throughs and carryouts. And so I think that'll be interesting to see. And then, depending on what we find out, we might want to consider adding language to cover that.
Right. Yeah, so just like limited service restaurant was, you had full service, limited service, and then comes some specialty stuff outside of that. It wasn't really any separation on the limited service of different things, so.
Right.
And then if I recall at the last council meeting, you drew a distinction between whether or not you pay for the food first and then you get it.
Yep.
Or do you sit down, or do you get your food, eat your food, and then pay for it?
Correct. That's the distinction that NIAX makes as they break down everything, is that full-service restaurants, you're paying after you eat. And the quick service restaurants, like the fast foods, you're paying before you eat. So that's how.
But then we
NIAX
got into a discussion about what if I ordered online and go drive up to like Applebee's and they bring it out to my car?
Yep.
Does that mean Applebee's is now a fast food
Yeah,
restaurant?
and that's where I think, to me, that's where nothing changes. So, pick a restaurant, Biaggi's. Biaggi's, you could do carryout, you could call ahead and go pick it up before COVID, but it was basically what we would call a standard restaurant, where you would go there, order off a menu, you would have service, and you'd pay after you eat. But you did have the ability to call in and order and go pick it up, and that's still the same now. Now, when you go there, they have more carryout lanes. I think those will eventually all go back away, and they'll have their standard 2 or 3 spots.
And Pizza Hut was the other that kind of did both.
Yeah,
Had a drive-up option and an eat-in option that was a pay after you ate.
correct. And you're always gonna have an outlier here and there, depending on what their business plan is, but
I think you mentioned Pizza Ranch. You pay first at the counter and then you go through and sit down and eat. But you paid first,
right.
but it's not a fast food restaurant.
By our definition, it would be, but yeah.
And where the issue is relevant here before us is whether or not in the PUD, where it has limited the number of restaurants, fast food restaurants.
Correct. In this PUD, standard restaurants, you can have as many as you want, which would be a Ruby Tuesday, which is there and in the PUD. It limits fast food restaurants to 2. And R&R's request and what you approved with the first reading 2 weeks ago is to allow 1 additional fast food restaurant.
Which would allow a drive-through lane,
You would have to assume it would have a drive-through, yes.
which we consider to be a fast food drive-through.
So Steve, since we're talking about that corner of the world, so where Pizza Ranch is, Ruby Tuesdays, and there's an Arby's there. So is there 2 fast food restaurants and 1 standard restaurant? I mean, I don't know if that's one PUD or.
Yep, it's all the same PUD. Culver's and Arby's would be the 2 fast foods that are currently allowed in the PUD. So those would be the 2. And Ruby Tuesdays and Pizza Ranch would be considered to be standard restaurants for purposes of that PUD.
And this location is going to be on 86th Street.
Correct.
And if they put a restaurant in there, which they could do, a standard restaurant,
Yes,
but if they want to put a restaurant in there with a drive-through lane, that's why we need to make a change here tonight.
correct. Yeah, correct. A standard restaurant, no change would be required. To add an additional fast food restaurant, yes. And so 2 weeks ago, you approved the first reading of an ordinance to rezone it and to allow 1 additional fast food restaurant.
Okay.
I guess,
I
for me,
will-
I don't really see any.
I'll be abstaining for a professional conflict.
Easy way out.
The information didn't change, I guess, for me to have us help us define it any better. I don't think there's any better way than what we currently have, so. I guess I was gonna make the motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 2021-13.
Okay, motion by Obrecht,
Second,
second by Russell. Any further discussion? Not, please vote.
I would note, we do have a request, if you're inclined to waive the 3rd reading on this one.
So Nicole.
get typing, huh?
Can I get a clarification on how that, like, we got a letter from Nat that was in our packet, and tonight we're just getting a verbal request on these R&R projects. How is that process supposed to work?
We'd had an email
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, we did have, that's right, there was an email.
Okay, I guess I'd prefer that be shared with the rest of us if you're going to ask us to.
Yeah, and typical procedure
Do
is
that.
they are, I
Yeah.
don't know where.
Sometimes they just don't come in before we can get them copied,
Right.
but, and
When I get those, I send those to Nicole and AJ. Sometimes we'll talk about it to try to feel out if that seems like it's appropriate. Yeah, generally, that is our policy, to make sure that you're aware that we do receive those requests.
yeah, we typically do. It just,
We like, and frankly, we like to have them when the council packet goes out. Sometimes they come out a little bit later.
I guess that's 2 more motions then.
If you're inclined to waive the third, yes, it would be.
Yeah, 'cause this is the second reading.
All right, well, then next would be motion to suspend the rules requiring a third reading.
Well, we've already made this.
Oh, I apologize. The previous motion was,
We already passed the second reading, so
yes.
But suspending the rules.
Before we do it, let me just ask, is it, at this point, is 2 more weeks critical? Do we just do the third reading in 2 weeks and call it good, or do you need the third one waived? Because we'd have to go through the site plan process and do everything anyway.
yeah.
Okay.
I thought the request was for the previous item, not, did I screw that up? I remember the email, but anyway, so we don't need to suspend, we don't need to waive the third.
Yep, so the second one's good, and we'll do the
Okay.
third one in 2 weeks. That just simplifies it. Okay,
Right, they'll be on, at that point, it'll be on the consent agenda.
correct. Yep, yeah, it'll be on consent agenda. Okay, thank you.
All right, then moving on to item 7.2. That did pass, so we'll move on to item 7.2. The Urbandale Elementary School, number 2, Valerius site plan at 3305 92nd Street. See you.
Nicole, am I sharing? I think it says I'm sharing. Does it need to, okay. I'm sorry, I'm not rushing you. Okay, here we go. So this is the layout plan for the new Valerius Elementary. As you all know, school board is going through the process of combining 6 schools into 4. This one went through the typical conditional use permit process, which was done in May. And so now we're going through the site plan process. What you see here, this dark outline, is the main building and the wings off of each side. It's about 119,000 square feet, pre-K through 5th grade. The plan is when it opens to have students somewhere in the neighborhood of like 640. And then there are some expansion. You see this dash line here off the east end and a dash line here off the west end where they could do an expansion should they need that in the future, which could bring enrollment up somewhere to the neighborhood of about 840 students. Access will continue to be off of the west end in through here with parking and circulation in this area, a larger parking lot with the 28E agreement to be on the park property. Then there's some additional parking inside of the bus loop, which will function, come off the street here to the south. And then there's some overflow play area and overflow parking on evenings when they have those special events and they just need a little bit more parking. So Planning and Zoning Commission does recommend approval subject to the items noted. Be happy to answer any questions.
Steve, I had a question from the P&Z minutes. There's some discussion about the overflow parking, and I didn't understand whether they were talking if that was going to be on the soccer field.
They're talking
or
about
it's
this
going to be on
area.
the hard surface.
Yeah, they're talking about this right here. This would be a hard surface play area, but if it would be needed in the evenings for parking spaces, they could park in that area as well.
Okay. Because I didn't want that on the soccer field, because don't we have an arrangement with them on the soccer field?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
And the parking on the north is the shared parking with the city.
Correct.
That's actually city ground that parking lot's in to the
Correct,
north.
and that's included in the agreement.
Yeah.
Anything I didn't mention that needs to be added? Okay.
All right. Further questions?
Maybe this question is for Jan. So we're adding the parking that'll be in the back end of Walker Johnson Park. Will there be better, or will we be changing any sidewalks or any access within the park to make that parking lot more connected to the park?
The existing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the existing sidewalk that we have by the tennis courts, this will connect to that, and then the sidewalk along the north end. So there will be a connection, and people that are using the park will have handicapped accessible access to that.
Well, I think it's a great way for us to share resources with our schools, and I think it's great that we're utilizing the parking and the soccer fields in a shared way.
All right.
This is my home elementary school. I attended first through fifth grade here, so I'm sad to see it go, but I'm excited for what's going to be replaced. So,
Eagles.
That's right, go Valerius Eagles, and I'm happy to make the motion for Urbandale's new elementary school number 2, council letter 6791.
Okay, motion by Caduce,
I'll second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote.
They gonna let you take a brick or something?
You can be at the ribbon cutting.
I've got a brick
Hang
from my
around
old
doing
building.
demolition and just kind of,
Give you a brick from the.
right, yep.
That passes. All right, thank you. Good, exciting to have that coming along. Thank you. Item 7.3 is the Carmel Park final plat at 142nd Street and Maple Drive.
This is the final plat. This is 142nd Street here, a new cul-de-sac called Maple Drive, which lines up with Maple on the west side of 142nd Street, will come in to serve these lots. There are 12 single-family lots and an outlot. This is the outlot with the detention right here. When this was rezoned, there was a condition of rezoning that the lots be 80 feet wide, and they're all much larger than that. So this still serves our need for large estate-type lots. The average lot area is about 22,500 square feet. So Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval, subject to items noted. Be happy to answer questions.
And I guess just per an email we got earlier, is this Urbandale School District or is this land West Des Moines?
Yeah, that's
It's
Urbandale, yeah.
Okay. So we got an email about wanting buildable lots in Urbandale, so Urbandale School District, so. An email a week ago and now this.
Motion?
With that, make a motion to approve Council Letter 6792.
Motion by Obrecht. Second by Caduce. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Item 7.4 is the Urban Ridge Plat 2, final plat at 167th Street and Mill Pond Drive.
Another final plat, this is at the other end of the spectrum. These lots are 46 feet wide, so quite a bit smaller, which is good. That gives us a variety of lot widths, but this is Plat 2 of Urban Ridge. Plat 1 is here to the south. This is on the north side of Meredith Drive. There was a rezoning that was approved in 19 to allow these smaller lots with a maximum density of 8 units per acre. As I mentioned, these are 46 feet wide on about 10.7 acres, and it's the last 52 lots that are part of this plat. I believe there's 101 total when you add in what was in the first phase. Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval. Be happy to answer questions.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Questions for Steve on this?
I just don't want to be the snowplow driver that has to clear out Mill Pond Circle.
New challenge.
Yeah, we might be replacing a few mailboxes there.
Yeah.
I would move approval of Resolution 187-2021.
Okay, motion by Poggi,
Second?
second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Okay, it takes us to item 8, regular agenda items. 8.1 is the professional services agreement for the Aquatic Recreation Senior Facility Project. And introducing this is our Parks and Rec Director, Jan Herke. Jan?
Mr. Mayor, member of the council, tonight before you is professional services agreement to do a community survey of aquatic recreation senior facility. Will still to be determined what type of facility that would be. And this is the first step in that process. So in the CIP, it was approved to fund and hire a consultant to perform this survey to get the determine the level of support from our community and what type of recreation facility that the community would want. Also want to mention that in the city's purchasing policy, we do have a requirement of a formal RFQ process for any of the process that's over $10,000, but it also includes that the city manager can request to the council to make an exception of the competitive bidding process. So staff, as well as the city manager, is recommending that waiving of that recommendation or that requirement in recommendation to hire Seltzer and Company to do this survey. And it would include the justifications to bypass that process and to go with Seltzer and Associates is have decades of experience in regards to the polling, compiling research, facilitating community surveys, which obviously this is the process and the project that we're talking about. In addition, we were fortunate to have Seltzer and Company. We're familiar with them. They provided their services for our 2019 1-cent sales tax survey and was quite successful. So they have a familiarity with our community. So we are recommending to, one, to bypass our usual process and go directly to hiring Seltzer and Company. And then also, we negotiated with Ms. Seltzer and her company the scope of the project, which would include, again, our main goal here is to get the input from the community of what they'd like to see in a facility, as well as their level of support in regards to the cost of that. The goal, it would include 500 contacting by telephone interviews of 500 residents and compiling that information and to gauge their level of support as well as the likelihood of voting. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. The negotiated fee for those services is $40,000.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. Any questions?
Can I,
Go ahead.
I'm assuming this is Ann on our screen.
Yes, Ms. Seltzer is on the WebEx.
Can I ask some questions of her, please? So I know you're wildly successful at what you do. And I think that the work that you did for us in 2019 was top notch, but I guess I need further reassurance with the transition from people having a landline to a cell phone. I was absolutely giddy because I was called to participate in your last Iowa poll last month, but I was called on my landline, which I very, very rarely answer. And I believe I happened to be walking by it and the caller ID said Seltzer on it. And I'm like, I mean, I'm just a geek, so that's why I answered it. And I was incredibly excited to take part in this Iowa poll. But, you know, we are definitely in the minority of people in my age bracket and below that have a landline. So I guess I'd just like you to explain, I mean, I hope it's not proprietary, but how you are reaching this broad section that we need to reach for this study.
Well, first of all, thank you for participating in our Iowa poll. The method for that is that we purchase a sample that is mostly cell phones and then augmented with landlines. We want to get 60% or more of our completes from people talking on their cell phones. So we're able to manage all of that and have been able to manage that going back to about 2010. For this poll, I understand Jan said it would be a poll of residents. It's actually a poll of registered voters in the Urbandale City District, inside the city the lines. And what we do is take that list and send it off to a phone lookup house, and they will append numbers and check the numbers that are there. So if a household has gotten rid of its landline, then we can match it to a cell phone that is using that address. So what we want is for every registered voter in Urbandale to have an equal chance to be contacted for participation in this poll. And my job is to give them their best shot to do that.
So you have a company that you hire that, because the numbers that come with those voting lists are horrible. So you have somebody that you go to that gives you better numbers.
That's correct.
Wow, I am such a geek about this sort of stuff. This is fascinating, but I'll just keep my fingers crossed that I get called on this one too. I don't think my luck's that good though.
I cannot guarantee it one way or the other.
And then my other question is, how will you weight the Dallas County versus Polk County aspect of our community?
Right. So we're able, through the voter records, to determine what are the proportion of households on each of those sides. And we'll be able to make sure that that's appropriate if by chance it doesn't fall, it doesn't just work out by the way random sampling works to show it that way. If we need to make an adjustment, that's easy to do. I'll just add, since you're a geek, that we also stratify our list by age cohorts so that we are sure we are putting the proportionate number of dials into the younger as we are into the older. As you know, we end up with older people more willing to answer their phone in the first place, and often sometimes complete. So we could get completely full of our 500 registered voters, and the average age, the median age, be 65. So we don't want that, and so we do our best to do that. But again, we will know, because it's a finite group of people, what the proper age distribution is, and we can adjust the data to look like that. Very common.
Okay, just one more little question. So you will use very recent voting records to get those?
Well, the auditor has updated since the 2020 election.
Right. Okay.
Will be up to date as of then.
Okay, great.
And some auditors, continue to update, along the way.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating talking to you.
And then I had a question. I guess the 500, as you start breaking down the cohort, sometimes you end up, if we get 2 or 3 layers deep, maybe 1 or 2 people that land in that grouping. Is 500 enough to give us sampling at, say, hey, it's a Polk County voter that's with kids that lives as this age group and so forth? Well, you need to go beyond 500 if you'd get too small in a grouping?
Well, we wouldn't go after that small of a grouping. So there's the reason to get a larger sample size is how finely you want to cut the data. So if you want Dallas County residents who are under the age of 50, who have children, who are women, you probably have diced that up a little small. Now, independently, we can look at Dallas County versus Polk County. We can look at men versus women. We can look at households with children out. It's when you start saying and, that you want this and this and this and this. Once you get women, that's half your sample, 250. Once you want them under the age of 50, well, that's probably a third, maybe. So you can see, and then add children in. Well, that's typically 20%. So you would get down to a few, and we would never show you data on such a small group.
So when we get the data back, we don't really want to go more than 1 and, it sounds like.
Correct. And we'll work with your staff as we're getting ready to go into the field to say, look, here, we call these banner points. What are the groups of demographics that we want to slice the data by? Take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
I want to be clear. I am open, if you wish to add more respondents to this, is adjust the price.
All right.
I have been approached by at least 3 or 4 citizens who are aware of this survey. And the common question is, why are we taking a survey of whether or not the citizens of Urbandale want a pool or want an aquatic center? Can't we just go to a vote after some sort of a campaign or an education process? And number 2, it was my understanding we were going to have a copy of the questions, because I was approached by an individual today at the Urbandale Chamber Luncheon that, well, you can ask the question any way you want to skew the outcome that you want. And I said, no, because it was my understanding we were going to have a copy of the questions that were going to be asked of those that you were contacting. And then thirdly, this personally, I just think $40,000 is a lot of money. So I've said my piece. I've passed on the comments that I've heard from other Urbandale citizens regarding this survey? Thank you.
Well, I'm a member of the committee which came up that we needed to do this because what do you present to the voters right now? Are you going to, there's, we can't even agree among the committee. We need to have some idea. Do you go at them first and say, we're putting a senior center, an outdoor pool, an indoor pool? They vote that down and then you go at a smaller project, or what do you do? It could take 10 years to use the voting process to determine what should or shouldn't be built. So the purpose of this survey is to narrow down as to what should be and, what the citizens want. Then we send it to the architects to come up with a plan and a cost estimate. Then we can give the voters something that they see and can appreciate when they vote on it.
So, yeah, the question is simply not whether or not we do a pool. There are multiple options. We discussed it at that joint P&Z, or the joint Parks and Rec and council meeting, is we needed to have something like this so we can intelligently move forward on what we would present to voters, so.
And if through the survey, the voters come back and say, don't build us anything, is that an option?
And that's why I wanted to see some of the questions. I mean, is that one of the questions?
Well, we don't have the questions developed.
We haven't developed the questions yet.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's something to come next, but the first part of this is to simply approve the agreement first, and then we would develop the questions through staff and through Ann, so.
And that's exactly it, Mr. Mayor, of if approved tonight, staff would work with Ann in regards to formulating those questions. And as you had asked at a previous meeting in regards to how much will things cost for capital and operational, that is the key questions we need to ask. It might be, yeah, I would love to have a Lexus, but once you tell me how much it is, I don't want it. That's one of the key reasons for the survey as well, is not only do you want it, but here's going to be the cost impact. Would you support it? The ultimate goal of this survey is what you would want, but also what you would support. So that feedback then can help you as a governing body and a decisions maker of how we go forward. And Ann and I also made discussion I want to answer as well. I think at the Lunch and Learn, I said, well, ideally we'll come with one that rises to the top, and that's exactly what we'll do. And Ann, in my discussion, is this is one tool in the overall discussion. We have 10 years of public input as well. So Ann isn't the crystal ball and magic maker going to say, it's going to be this, and that's what you should put on the ballot, but it will be certainly key input from a random sample survey. So just one tool in our whole toolbox that then ultimately you, 5 council members, get to make that final decision. But yes, this is a very key first step. And as mentioned in this council letter, we're also, the information that Ann will need now as a consultant to say, this is how much these options cost. And working with Nikki, our finance director, this would be the implications on your taxes. So those are the key. I do want to mention that if you saw on KCCI, the segment last night, it says questions will be available in 1 to 2 weeks. I noticed if you look on the last paragraph, they probably took it as once we find out the capital and operational cost, questions would be ready in 1 to 2 weeks. That's probably where they got that. We won't have questions ready in 1 to 2 weeks. I know Ann works fast, but we certainly have waited this long. We want to be very strategic in how we move forward.
Well, I have a long history of advocacy around this project, and this is really the piece, as frustrated as I am about that we're still having this discussion, this is really the piece that we've been missing, and the piece that prior councils told me as I was a citizen advocate that we really needed. You know, we did lots of stickers on pictures and things like that, but we never got to this point of being able to really figure out what people are willing to pay for. So I'm excited to be able to keep moving this forward. I mean, you mentioned 10 years. I feel like it's solid 10 years I've been talking about this. So I am very much looking forward to moving forward on this. And if I would be happy to move Council Letter 6783 if we're done with our discussion.
We have 2 motions that we need to take up. First is the request to waive the bidding.
I would move that we waive the competitive bidding requirements of the City of Urbandale purchasing policy to execute a professional services agreement with Seltzer and Company Incorporated.
Okay, motion by Carberry Montgomery,
Second.
second by Poggy. Any further discussion? Please vote. Okay, that passes.
Now I will move Council Letter 6783.
Okay, motion by Carberry Montgomery,
Second.
second by Poggy. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Thank you. All right, and that's, the next step is, again, trying to determine where we are and what our residents want. So thank you, Jan, thanks, AJ, and we'll work with Ann to get that put together. All right, Mayor and council items, item 9, Ron, anything to say?
Just want to thank the committee and staff for the 4th of July. Seemed like a pretty nice weekend, and the parade, the temperature was great, so thank you for that. So I thought it went well.
All right, thanks, Ron. Bridget?
I was going to say the same thing. It was fantastic. I think people were just really glad to be out in the world celebrating. And I think the committee did a great job. Thank you to our decorators and drivers and support vehicles. My family has never had so much fun as they did getting to and from the parade. So I guess I should have probably asked this before, but it wouldn't have changed my vote, AJ. Could you, there was in the changes in the fee structures, the changes that I noticed that were most significant were related to the bulk item collection pickup. And if you could give us a explanation, it sounded like the spring cleanup, there wasn't going to be a bulk item collection, if I read it correctly. I don't need you to answer this right now, but I'd like you to just give us an explanation on the changes. They seemed reasonable, but I did notice that there appeared to be no more bulk item fee at spring cleanup,
Okay, that would
which I
be
think is a big deal.
5.5 citywide fees and fines.
Yes, and there's a lot of pages in there, so
Okay, no, be happy
I
to.
just, that stuck out.
Nope.
And then the AJ and the mayor and I had some good discussion about the number of fireworks complaints and citations written, and I think this is just going to be something that we have to deal with, but I'm concerned that we need to be more forceful in our attempts to give citations. I know you had indicated talking to Mac.
Well, and in fact, we had that conversation this
Yeah.
morning too, and so there was a pretty lengthy and broad discussion on MAC this morning. I mean, we're far from isolated on frustration on this, and so I think there'll be some discussion coming out of that as far as how we can maybe approach the legislature, and I don't know what the answer is right now. But
Yeah, I just.
I think I can certainly tell you from, Dave can attest to it too, but certainly there's a lot of frustration all around.
Oh, and I completely agree. I just like to see us try something different next year in terms of, I don't know, Derek's handiwork and graphics, and I don't know if he can make them more threatening or something. I don't know.
As long as there's legal sales of an illegal product, the product.
Yeah,
can't
I
be
mean, I
illegally,
just
think-
feel like we need to try harder. And I mean, it's not just us. I know it's everybody. So I wanted to bring that up. And then we passed the Fisher Farm down zoning, I guess, tonight. And so if we could get an update, like what the next steps would be on that project, I would appreciate it. Again, that could be for an email or something.
Go with the city attorney and we'll prepare.
But that seemed to be a very big deal that the Fishers had just walked away from.
Excuse me.
So what is that, where does that leave us? I'd like to know.
Next steps.
And then really excited about the Bucks Arena project, but would love to have some sort of regular update on that as well. Again, nothing that I need right now. I know Curtis said when I talked to him in the hallway, they're meeting regularly, but again, I'd just like to know what the next steps are and,
Be part of our discussion next week at your lunch.
okay. Great.
Not all inclusive,
Okay.
but we'll give you teasers.
That's all we get with that project.
That's about all we get at that project.
So no, that's all I have, but I can't say enough about the 4th of July, and the bingo tent was a blast. I really enjoyed that, so well done, 4th of July committee and the police department, and everybody did a great job.
The reports I heard from the 4th of July committee, it was a very good financial success for the committee too, so that was good. So I think people were itching to get out and spend money, so. Adam?
Yeah, continue to pile on the 4th of July. Enjoyed it, and the bands were good bands on the nights, so ended up with a couple date nights with my wife, which is unusual for us, so it's nice. But I'll pile onto the AJ request list. Talked to another municipality that they are delaying all construction, well, a majority of construction projects at 8 months because of lack of supply of materials. And so didn't know what we were running into on any of our it was all the vertical projects, not the streets and that, but vertical stuff was getting delayed. About an 8-month timeline because they just didn't think they could get steel and lumber. So didn't know if we were running into challenges with that too, so.
I will poll the engineering department. Steve and I talk about that periodically. We've noticed that the pricing for lumber has started to get more reasonable after a steady increase. Contractors are still taking permits out for single-family homes. So Steve, if you want to address that real quick, but the update that I provided you about 2 weeks ago came from Steve's office, and it really was one of those, we were surprised during the pandemic, we had over 220, and then coming out of the pandemic with the issues that you've raised, again, the upward trajectory is very impressive.
It's surprising that they would say that. As far as single-family home permits, which is always a good barometer, through June, we've issued 184 of them. That's more than the entirety of the years 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Those 6 years, for the whole year of each of those 6 years, we didn't do 184. So we might break 300 this year. The plats keep coming. On the commercial side, we've had several meetings lately of buildings that intend to break ground yet this year. One of the quick stars has already broken ground, so we're not seeing that.
Well, and what they're looking at is projects are starting but can't get finished.
Yeah.
And so they're delaying because it's like, hey, we've got the RFP, we've got the promise, but we just can't get finished.
Yeah.
And so they're slowing the process.
We sure have not heard that. Maybe we'll see. But
Okay.
And that, for our one project that we have ongoing for the finalization of the construction of the Public Works Recreation Building, that's underway. That's been underway under contract. They're moving that one forward. I can't think of anything else from the city perspective that we have any related issues on. As we move forward with the park, the regional park shelter and the Barrett Park shelter, we may find, but comparatively speaking, that's relatively a small number, a small volume of lumber or and/or support material. Certainly we'll monitor that through Steve's department. Curtis and I and Aaron had an opportunity to go visit the Iowa Bankers Association building last week that is nearing completion. Certainly that was started pre-pandemic, and they're probably lined up all their material. So obviously that is almost done. We're not hearing anything, but you're right. You might get underway, get your site work done, and all of a sudden you find from your supplier that there is no steel or there is no lumber or some delay-related issues. But we'll continue to monitor that.
All right.
I would just add to kudos. Thank you, Nicole. Great job. That was really a lot of fun and well received by folks. Then I'll let Bob, he alluded earlier, I was on that MAC call this morning, and just about every jurisdiction every municipality that was on that call complained about the war zone that their cities had become with fireworks. And and I agree with Bob, there's really nothing that they can do unless they actually see someone light the fireworks off and then issue the citation. But hopefully the legislature will hear this and there may be some changes too. And then earlier tonight, before the council meeting, we did meet with a couple of the representatives from Quickstar. And we really appreciate them and the two projects that they have here in Urbandale that they've started. And kudos to Curtis or his department for helping shepherd that through the process. So we look forward to Quickstar
They're
coming.
going up fast.
Yeah.
One on Plum is,
Yeah, the one coming up on Plum.
I mean, the roof's on already, and that's supposed to open in October, so.
Yeah, she said October 6th for the one on Plum Drive and then November like 13th for the one
Yep.
out on Douglas, so.
And they haven't even put any, they've just been moving dirt. They haven't done anything yet, so they're pretty quick.
They must think they can do it. Well, that's why they call them Quickstar.
They're Quickstar.
Though I see the one on Alice's Road every day as I take my kids to lifting or practice, and that one's going really quick.
Yeah, they're certainly making a presence here, and that's great.
All right, Adam.
I'll just echo the 4th of July committees. Flat Matt and I had a great time calling bingo as well. So I got some great photos. And then I'll just echo the comments about the Merle Hay Mall project. I've gotten a couple of calls from the real estate community about wanting to do other projects in that area. So I appreciate it. Just forward them on to Curtis and he picks up the torch. So I appreciate that. It certainly caused some momentum and some excitement for that area. And people are definitely interested in what's available, what's happening. And thanks to Curtis and Aaron for taking it on.
All right, thank you. I just don't have a whole lot. I am going to, Curtis and Derek, I'm just going to plug the State of the City. Might as well get that date out, right? September 30 is the date, so put that on your calendar for the State of the City. Will also be in combination with the Red event. It's going to be at Station 43, and so we're getting that put together, and we're also have a lot of details. That should be a fun evening, so put that.
So you said it's going to be a combination, is it going to be an open house at Station 43?
So we're going to have an open house at 43, right? And in the time capsule.
I didn't know we had a time capsule there.
We're going to.
Will.
Oh.
We don't now.
Is that because we had to redo some of the brickwork there? We have an opportunity to slide it in?
That work has been completed, so that opportunity is missed, but this will be out into the open space.
Okay.
And so, yes, this is one that we haven't determined the size of the capsule, so don't get overly anxious about what you can put in it.
Are you leading that up, Derek? Okay, I'll talk to you some more, get more details. Can we put flat mat in it?
Probably not the whole thing.
Photograph it.
Maybe his face. Maybe we spend his face.
Acetate flat mat.
Yeah.
No, I just have some questions, so that's exciting. That was one of the things I was gonna ask about is if we were gonna do a long-awaited open house there, I think.
We were looking for opportunities, and this presented itself very nicely.
I'm sure all the community wants to hear the State of the City address.
Well, yeah, I think so.
I'll be there.
Okay. I would hope they do. We're gonna make it exciting. You'll want to be there. Yeah. What's it?
I said, just be sure to add into the time capsule, I think like an N95 mask and.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe some sanitizer.
Trust me, that'll be appropriate, that's for sure. All right, I have nothing further. We do have a closed session item, so I'd ask for a motion in a second to enter into closed session under item 10.1.
Move to enter into closed session pursuant to section 21.51, small I.
Motion by Poggi. Second by Caduce. Discussion, please vote.
I voice vote yay.
I don't know if as an attorney, I could have read.
And I will note
Moni,
for
you're the other one.
those joining us on
Thank you,
WebEx,
Norman.
I'm gonna go ahead and discontinue that. We don't anticipate any motions after the closed session. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that connection here.
Good night, AJ.
Okay.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.